I never thought my wedding day would become the most controversial moment of my life. Standing at the altar, watching Sarah walk down the aisle in her stunning white dress, I felt like the luckiest man alive. The church was packed with 200 guests, all there to witness what should have been the perfect beginning to our married life. My best man, Marcus, stood beside me with that confident smile he'd worn since college. We'd been inseparable for 15 years through breakups, job losses, celebrations, and every milestone in between. He was more than a friend. He was the brother I never had. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears as we exchanged vows, and I could hear her mother sobbing softly in the front row. Everything was exactly as we'd planned it for the past 18 months. The flowers were perfect, the music was touching, and even the weather cooperated with a gorgeous sunny day in June. As the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I kissed Sarah with all the love I'd been holding back during the ceremony. The church erupted in applause, and for that brief moment, everything was absolutely perfect. Then came time for the speeches at the reception. We'd moved to the grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel, a venue that had cost us nearly $10,000 to book. The space was decorated with twinkling lights and white roses, creating an ethereal atmosphere that made Sarah gasp when she first saw it. Marcus stood up to give his best man speech, tapping his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. I settled back in my chair, expecting the usual embarrassing college stories and heartfelt wishes for our future. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the room, "I've known Jake for 15 years, and I can honestly say he's taught me everything about love and commitment." The crowd smiled warmly. "Watching him with Sarah has shown me what true partnership looks like." He paused, and I noticed his hand was shaking slightly. "In fact, Jake and Sarah have inspired me so much that I realized I couldn't wait another day to start my own journey." That's when everything changed. Marcus turned to the maid of honor, my wife's sister Emma, and dropped to one knee right there at our head table. The room fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop as Marcus pulled out a small velvet box from his tuxedo pocket. Emma's face went from confused to shocked in a matter of seconds. My jaw dropped, and I felt Sarah's hand grip mine so tightly I thought she might break my fingers. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening at my wedding. "Emma," Marcus continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension that had suddenly filled the room, "you've been the light of my life for the past 2 years. I know this might seem unconventional, but being here today, surrounded by love and all our friends and family, I couldn't think of a more perfect moment to ask you to be my wife." I heard gasps from multiple tables. Sarah's mother stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. My own parents looked at each other in disbelief. But Marcus just stayed there on one knee, holding that ring up to Emma, like he was the star of his own romantic movie. Emma's eyes darted between Marcus, Sarah, and me. Her face had turned bright red, and I could see tears forming in her eyes, but not the happy kind. "Marcus," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible even with the microphone nearby. "This isn't call. We should talk about this later." "Come on, baby," Marcus pressed on, his confidence starting to waver. "I love you. Everyone here loves us. Jake and Sarah would want us to share in their happiness, right?" He looked at me then, actually looked at me for approval, as if I would smile and nod and give him my blessing to hijack my wedding. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then, from somewhere in the back of the room, someone started booing. It was quiet at first, just one person, but then others joined in. The booing grew louder, mixed with angry murmurs and shocked exclamations. I saw my Uncle Tony stand up, his face red with indignation. "Are you kidding me right now?" he shouted. Marcus finally seemed to realize something was wrong. He started to stand up, the ring box still in his hand, when my father, a man who'd never raised his voice in his entire life, marched over to our table. My father, Robert, was a gentle giant of a man, 6'4", built like a linebacker even at 62, but with the temperament of a kindergarten teacher. I'd never seen him truly angry in my entire life, but watching him stride toward Marcus with fury in his eyes was like watching a completely different person. The crowd parted as he approached, and I could hear people pulling out their phones, no doubt recording what was about to become a viral disaster. "Young man," my father said, his voice low and dangerous, "you have exactly 10 seconds to put that ring away and sit down before I help you find your seat myself." Marcus, still caught up in his delusion that this was somehow romantic, actually tried to argue, "Mr. Peterson, I'm just expressing my love. Isn't that what today is all about?" That's when my father grabbed the glass of red wine from the nearest table and threw it directly at Marcus. The dark liquid splashed across his white shirt, an expensive rented tuxedo, spreading like blood across the fabric. Emma shrieked and jumped back, her bridesmaid dress catching a few drops. The crowd erupted into chaos, some people cheering, others gasping in shock, and a few trying to calm the situation down. But my father wasn't done. As Marcus stood there, dripping with wine and finally comprehending that he'd made a terrible mistake, my dad grabbed him by the collar. "You disrespect my son on his wedding day? You make this about yourself?" He wasn't shouting, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Get out, now." Sarah's father, Jim, joined mine, and together they started escorting Marcus toward the exit. But Marcus, in his infinite wisdom, decided to make one last stand. He yanked himself free and turned back to the microphone that was still on. "This is ridiculous," he announced to the room. "I'm just trying to celebrate love. Jake, come on, man. Tell them this is okay. We're brothers, right? You'd want me to be happy." I stood up then, my legs shaking with rage. Sarah tried to hold me back, but I gently removed her hand and walked over to where Marcus stood between our fathers. The entire room watched as I approached my best friend of 15 years, the man I'd chosen to stand beside me on the most important day of my life. "Brothers?" I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the volcano of emotions erupting inside me. "Brothers don't steal the spotlight on each other's wedding day. Brothers don't turn a celebration of someone else's love into their own personal theater. I could feel everyone's eyes on us, 300 guests holding their collective breath. You knew exactly what you were doing, Marcus. You planned this. You brought that ring here to my wedding and thought it would be cute to propose during your best man speech? Marcus tried to defend himself, his wine-stained shirt making him look pathetic rather than romantic. Jake, I thought you'd be happy for me. This is a celebration of love. No, I cut him off, my voice rising. This was a celebration of our love. Mine and Sarah's the wedding we spent a year and a half planning. The wedding we spent $40,000 on. The wedding, where our families came together for us. I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear my next words. You're so narcissistic that you couldn't let us have one day. One single day that wasn't about you. Emma finally found her voice then, and what she said shocked everyone, including Marcus. I can't believe you did this, she said, tears streaming down her face. I told you I wasn't ready. I told you I needed more time, and you decided to pressure me into saying yes by doing it in front of everyone at my sister's wedding? She pulled off the promise ring he'd given her 6 months ago and threw it at his feet. We're done. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't even look at me. The room erupted again, this time with applause for Emma. She ran toward the bathroom, Sarah quickly following to comfort her sister. Marcus stood there, looking like a deflated balloon, wine dripping from his jacket, his grand romantic gesture having exploded in his face. But even then, he couldn't just leave quietly. Fine, he shouted at the room. You're all just jealous. Jealous that I had the courage to show my love publicly. This is what's wrong with society. No one appreciates genuine emotion anymore. That's when my mild-mannered Uncle Walter, who'd had a few too many drinks, threw his beer at Marcus. It hit him square in the chest, adding to the wine stains. Then someone else threw a dinner roll. Within seconds, Marcus was being pelted with various food items as he tried to make his way to the exit. My father and Jim formed a protective barrier, escorting him out while shielding him from the worst of it. Though I noticed my dad accidentally stuck his foot out, causing Marcus to trip and faceplant right at the doorway. The next hour was damage control. Sarah and I tried our best to salvage what was left of our reception. The DJ, bless his soul, immediately started playing upbeat music to shift the mood. The catering staff quickly cleaned up the mess, and the photographer who'd captured the entire incident quietly asked if we wanted those photos deleted. I told him to keep them. Someday, we'd probably want to remember this insanity. Emma emerged from the bathroom with Sarah, her makeup fixed but her eyes still red. She apologized to us about 100 times, as if any of this was her fault. Sarah hugged her sister tightly and told her she'd done nothing wrong. The crowd gave Emma a standing ovation when she returned to the reception, and my groomsman Kevin quickly stepped up to give an actual best man speech that was heartfelt, funny, and appropriate. But the damage was done. Every time someone looked at us, I could see the pity in their eyes. Our wedding had become a spectacle, the kind of story that would be told at family gatherings for generations. Remember Jake and Sarah's wedding when the best man proposed? My grandmother came up to me, patted my cheek, and said, "Well, honey, at least no one will ever forget your anniversary." The rest of the reception continued, but it felt hollow. Sarah put on a brave face, smiling for photos and dancing with her father, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. During our first Dance to Perfect by Ed Sheeran, she whispered in my ear, "I can't believe he did this to us." I held her tighter and promised that we wouldn't let this ruin our marriage, even if it had ruined our wedding. Around midnight, as the reception was winding down, my phone started buzzing. Marcus had sent me a novel-length text message. Against my better judgment, I read it. He was apologizing but also defending himself, saying that love makes people do crazy things and that I should understand because I was in love too. He said he'd been planning this for months, that he thought it would be like a double celebration. He actually used the phrase killing two birds with one stone, as if our wedding was just a convenient venue for his proposal. I showed the message to Sarah, and she took my phone and blocked his number. "We're done with him," she said firmly. "I don't care how long you've been friends. Someone who could do this doesn't deserve to be in our lives." I agreed, but part of me mourned the loss of my oldest friendship, even as I recognized that Marcus had killed it himself with his selfishness. The honeymoon was supposed to be our escape, 2 weeks in Bali to forget about the chaos and just be newlyweds. But even paradise couldn't completely erase what had happened. The story had somehow made it onto social media, and we were getting messages from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who'd seen videos of the incident. Someone had posted it on Reddit, and it had gone viral with thousands of comments debating whether Marcus was romantic or psychotic. Sarah and I made a pact not to look at our phones for the rest of the trip, but the damage to our mood was done. Every time we'd start to relax, one of us would remember something about the wedding, and we'd spiral into discussing it again. "Did you see your aunt's face?" Sarah would say, and we'd laugh, but it was tinged with sadness. Our perfect day had been hijacked, and no amount of tropical beaches could change that. When we returned home, the drama continued. Marcus had been reaching out to all our mutual friends, trying to get them to convince me to forgive him. He'd shown up at my office twice, but security had turned him away after I'd warned them about him. Emma had moved back in with her parents temporarily because Marcus kept showing up at her apartment with flowers and apology letters. It was like he couldn't understand that his actions had consequences. 3 months after the wedding, I finally agreed to meet him for coffee, mainly because I wanted closure. He showed up looking haggard, with bags under his eyes and unkempt hair. The confident, charismatic Marcus I'd known was gone, replaced by someone who looked defeated. He started apologizing immediately, but then he said something that made my blood boil all over again. "I just thought that since you'd found your happiness, you'd want me to find mine too," he said. "I thought you'd be excited to share your special day with your best friend's special moment." I set down my coffee cup so hard it rattled the table. "Marcus, that's exactly the problem. It was my special day, mine and Sarah's, not yours. The fact that you still don't understand that shows me you haven't learned anything." I stood up to leave, but he grabbed my arm. Please, Jake. I've lost Emma. I've lost you. I've lost all our friends. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. I just wanted to do something memorable. I pulled my arm away. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. No one will ever forget what you did at my wedding. But memorable doesn't mean good, Marcus. You made my wedding about you, and that's something I can't forgive. A year passed. Sarah and I had settled into married life, and honestly, we were happy. The wedding disaster had become a funny story we'd tell at parties, though it still stung a little. We'd heard through the grapevine that Marcus had been going to therapy, trying to work on what his therapist apparently called narcissistic tendencies. Emma had started dating a guy named Tom, a soft-spoken engineer who treated her like gold. Life had moved on. Then we got the invitation. It was elaborate, gold-embossed, with Marcus and some woman named Jessica's names in flowing script. He was getting married. The audacity of him sending us an invitation after everything that had happened was breathtaking. Sarah's first instinct was to throw it in the trash, but I stopped her. An idea was forming in my mind, possibly petty, definitely vindictive, but undeniably tempting. What if we go? I said, turning the invitation over in my hands. Sarah looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you insane? Why would we go to his wedding after what he did at ours? I smiled, and it probably wasn't a nice smile, because we have some news to share, don't we? Sarah's hand went unconsciously to her stomach, where our 3-month secret was growing. We'd found out she was pregnant just 2 weeks ago and hadn't told anyone yet, wanting to wait until the second trimester to announce it. She caught on to what I was suggesting immediately. Jake, no Dan. We can't Dan. That would make us just as bad as him. Would it though? I argued. He announced his engagement at our wedding. We'd just be announcing a pregnancy at his. It's not like we'd be stealing his thunder completely. We'd just be sharing in the joy of the occasion. Sarah bit her lip, clearly torn between her good nature and the desire for revenge. That's really petty, Jake. Yes, I agreed. Yes, it is. We debated it for days. Sarah would swing between thinking it was justified and thinking we should be the bigger people. I'll admit, I was leaning heavily toward going through with it. The more I thought about Marcus standing there in his tuxedo, having his perfect moment, the more I wanted him to feel just a fraction of what we'd felt at our wedding. In the end, we decided to attend. We told ourselves we were going for closure, to show that we'd moved on, but we both knew the truth. We were going for revenge, wrapped in the civilized veneer of wedding attendance. Sarah bought a stunning navy blue dress that showed just the hint of her baby bump, and I rented a tuxedo that was notably nicer than the one I'd worn to my own wedding. The wedding was at a country club across town, a much smaller affair than ours had been. Maybe 100 guests, mostly people I didn't recognize. Jessica, the bride, was pretty in a generic sort of way, blonde, thin, with a nervous smile that never quite reached her eyes. When Marcus saw us arrive, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, hope, fear, and finally, resignation. He actually approached us during the cocktail hour. Jake, Sarah, I can't believe you came. This means so much to me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're not here for you, Marcus, Sarah interrupted, her voice cold. We're here for closure. The ceremony was standard, though I noticed Marcus kept glancing at us throughout, as if waiting for us to object or cause a scene. We sat quietly, politely, playing the role of gracious guests. Emma was notably absent, which didn't surprise me. Jessica's maid of honor was someone I'd never met, and the best man was Marcus's brother, who kept shooting us nervous looks. The reception was where we made our move. We waited until after the speeches, after the first dance, after dinner. The moment came during the cake cutting. As Marcus and Jessica were posing for photos with their cake, I stood up and tapped my champagne glass. The room fell silent, and I saw the color drain from Marcus's face. Excuse me, everyone, I began, my voice carrying across the small reception hall. I know it's unusual for a regular guest to make a speech, but Marcus and I go way back, and I wanted to share something special with everyone here. I could feel Sarah's hand on my back, supportive, but also slightly restraining. Marcus taught me something important at my wedding last year. He taught me that joyous occasions are meant to be shared with everyone present. Marcus was shaking his head slightly, his eyes pleading with me not to continue, but I did. So, in the spirit of sharing joy, I continued, raising my glass higher. Sarah and I wanted to let everyone know that we're expecting our first child. The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some people who didn't know the backstory started clapping and congratulating us. Others, who clearly knew about the wedding incident, gasped or fell silent. Marcus's face went from pale to red to purple in the span of seconds. Jessica looked confused, looking between her new husband and us, clearly not understanding why this was a problem. We're due in January, Sarah added, standing beside me with her hand on her bump. We thought what better place to announce it than at the wedding of such a dear old friend who believes in sharing special moments. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus's brother was whispering urgently in his ear, probably trying to prevent him from making a scene, but Marcus wasn't listening. He slammed his champagne glass down so hard it shattered, sending glass shards across the cake table and ruining the bottom tier of their wedding cake. "How dare you?" he shouted, his composure finally cracking. "This is my wedding, my day." "Oh," I said with mock surprise. "I'm sorry. I thought you believed wedding celebrations were perfect opportunities for personal announcements. Isn't that what you told me after you proposed at my wedding? That love should be celebrated whenever possible?" Jessica finally seemed to understand what was happening. She turned to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "You proposed to someone else at their wedding, and you never told me about this?" The room erupted into chaos. Marcus's family was trying to calm him down, while Jessica's family was demanding explanations. Some guests were recording on their phones, others were trying to leave discreetly. Marcus pushed past his brother and stormed over to us. You planned this, he accused, pointing a finger in my face. You came here just to ruin my wedding like you think I ruined yours. The difference, Sarah said coolly, is that we announced something that had already happened. We didn't pressure anyone into a life decision in front of a crowd. We didn't steal your first dance or your cake cutting. We just shared some news, the way you thought was appropriate at our wedding. Marcus's new wife, Jessica, was in tears, her makeup running down her face as she realized she'd married someone who'd pulled the same stunt we'd just pulled, but worse. She kept asking him, "How could you not tell me? How could you do that to your best friend?" Marcus had no good answers, just sputtering rage directed at us. Security eventually escorted us out, but not before I said one last thing to Marcus. Now you know how it feels. Now you understand what you took from us. The difference is, your marriage is just beginning, and you still have a chance to make it work. You took our perfect day and made it about you. We just gave you a taste of your own medicine. Outside the country club, Sarah and I sat in our car for a moment in silence. The adrenaline was wearing off, and I wasn't sure if I felt satisfied or empty. Sarah spoke first. "I don't feel as good about this as I thought I would." "Me neither," I admitted. "I thought revenge would make me feel better, but I just feel tired." We drove home in contemplative silence, both of us processing what we'd done. Yes, Marcus had deserved it. Yes, it was poetic justice. But we'd also lowered ourselves to his level, and that didn't sit well with either of us. When we got home, I unblocked Marcus's number and sent him one final message. "We're even now. What you did was wrong, and what we did tonight was wrong too. I'm not proud of it, but I needed you to understand the pain you caused. I hope you and Jessica can move past this and have the marriage Sarah and I have built, despite what happened at our wedding. This is goodbye, Marcus. Don't contact us again." He never replied, and I didn't expect him to. I heard through mutual friends that he and Jessica separated 3 months later, apparently unable to get past the drama of their wedding day and the revelation of what he'd done at ours. Emma married Tom in a small ceremony with just family. Sarah and I were there, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. Sarah and I had our daughter Lily that January. As I held her for the first time, I realized that all the drama with Marcus felt so insignificant compared to this moment. Our wedding might have been hijacked, but our marriage was strong. We'd survived betrayal, enacted revenge, and come out the other side together. Sometimes I think about Marcus and wonder if he ever truly understood what he did wrong. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. He was a chapter in my life that ended with a bang, not a whimper. Sarah and I tell the story sometimes at parties, and people are always shocked. But we tell it as a cautionary tale. Don't let anyone steal your moment. But also, don't become the villain in someone else's story just to even the score. Excessive too as unreasoned. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living a happy life despite what others have done to you.